Good morning. We'll start in a moment. How you doing? Did you have a good sleep? Oh, we're in red today, Kate. You got red on, MA? I don't know what that's got to do with anything other than I've got my little bird feather in. A little present that I got this morning under the door. Have an affinity with birds, if you don't know. I saw it as a sign. Alrighty. I'm just getting the Facebook going and we are live. You know, let's start with the bell, with the gong, because that's how we find. Well, do we need a reason? Let's get that screen out. Is that going? And so I can concentrate on you. Let us just get here because feel it. Can you feel it? And then we're going to get into something really, to me, very powerful. One of the most, I won't say if not the, but one of the most power-filled stories of our ancient matriarchs, right? We're going to start touching into why the story is important today. Oh, Lisa's here too. Hey, Lisa. I didn't see you there. And how I live that story, how we can use it as a metaphor, right, for our journey. There's so much in it that we're going to be touching in, as I said yesterday, touching in on the parts of the story, but of course I'm going to bring in the mysticism of it, the mystical aspects of that path, and also into contemporary times, aka your everyday life, how you can live this at the microcosm. So I'm going to be attempting to show you the different levels and perspectives. So meaning we look at not the object, we look at all sides of it, and there's like every aspect, which is also a metaphor for how we work with the self and all the aspects of the self, right? And then how we connect that to the other, right? So it's not something that we're going to go, oh, you're going to get it in this time this morning. Absolutely no way. I've been receiving this information for years and years and years, and every year, every day, I get another like, oh, that's what it is. Oh, that, right? So it's this unfolding. It's infinite. Just like love is infinite, unconditional, the purity of unconditional love, infinite. But these, this sharing, these teachings they're guidance and the breadcrumbs, right, along the path, where when you can't see the whole picture yet, you know, it's just that little reminder that, oh, okay, I'm here on the path. And what does that look like when I'm here on the path? Like you could say, well, when Cynthia's here on the path, she says it looks like this for her. When these matriarchs are here on their path, that's what it looked like for them. Ah, okay. There's a resonance there. I understand, right? So I'm going to do some storytelling today. I'm going to write their names on the board so you can follow a little bit better. And then in the mastermind, we're going to go, we will complete the meditation we did yesterday, but also take your Q&A and see where this really is showing in your life today. Right? So I give that, I guess, caveat that to give me some grace in where I need to go to get you all the pieces of the story. Yeah. Okay. Story time. So take a breath. Just take a moment to arrive in this space. Coming into this time together where you can breathe. Create space. Receive what yours to receive in this time. Okay, so if you're on the Facebook group, say hi so I can see who you are and bring you into the conversation already. I'll just bring you over here so I can look at you there. Okay. So, and let me know if you were here yesterday. So those on Zoom, obviously I can see you and I know you were here yesterday. For those watching on Rhombus, let me know. And if you've got any questions, because I set it up yesterday a little bit. So I touched into how we were going to look at different stories, different traditions, different ancient texts, different traditions of mysticism. Today, we're starting with an aspect of the rise. Okay, so looking at the energy or the force we might call the feminine. Now, it gets a little complex because the masculine, the men in the world are also an aspect of the feminine. Oops, sorry. I lost my microphone. Can you hear me better now? There you go. And so on a macrocosm, we have the beloved, God, Hashem. Let's leave it at that for now. Human beings are the feminine to the beloved on one level. Okay? Yet we are man and woman on another level. So then we have man and woman in relationship here on earth, where the woman, the feminine in the feminine body, and then with the feminine in the masculine body.
But the human, God-man, men and women, are the so-called bride, the feminine, the beloved of the beloved. So when we talk about union and one coming into one, and all of those sort of, ways of describing unity and the end goal for many, right, that are spiritually inclined, yeah? It's about this connecting of two aspects within the self, within our world. And it really, I'm going to say this just in case, somebody's watching this and going, well, where do I fit? Because I don't identify as that. You will still, regardless of what you identify as, masculine or feminine, you will still have masculine and feminine within the physical body, regardless of what your physical identifies as. So as I tell the story, just bear that in mind. And if you have questions about that, we can bring that in as we go along. So that's the setup, okay? Now, the characters in this story, and it's not going to be a full-on story. Like, I'm guessing by now you know how I tell story. I give a piece of it and then I pull it out and I give you the mystical aspects. So in the story of Esther, one of the few women that has a book on her in the ancient texts. So we could say in the Tanakh, in the Torah, in the Old Testament, and there's probably other areas that she's written about. Why is she in there? And why was it one of the last books before it was sealed, before the book, the Bible, the Old Testament, the Torah was sealed? Now, bear with me. It doesn't matter what religion you are. I am no religion. I never have been. I was never, my family, we weren't christened or, all of that. I've been blessed and initiated by many master guru, holy person, even the Coptic Pope back in my 20s when I went to Egypt. All sorts of people, right? And that's been my journey. Unconditional love, unconditional love. So I'm telling you this story, and if you're not into it, just see it as a story, because it's an awesome story. But the characters in them, so these texts, they have parables and metaphor, and then they have the mystic understanding. And so when you read, and you can read it, I was going to read it word for word, and if you want that at some point, I can, or go to the Book of Ruth, Google it or whatever. I actually have it here. But the writing is so small that it's just so small, and it's not going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to unpack it for you. So in Hebrew, it's called the Megillah, right? And these are the key characters. I'm going to write them down so you can follow. And if this is all that you get today, it'll be something to contemplate, right? So we have these characters. So when you read it, we have the king. I call Hashverosh, but it's written like this. So maybe I'll use black so you can see it properly. So I've got to set you up so that you can follow the story, because I'm not linear. Okay, so this is how you spell right? Who is king. So I'm going to go off my notes. I spell it differently, but that's what it says in the original text. So then we have Vashti. Do you remember Vashti? Those of you that have been around, you don't remember Vashti? She's the queen. Oh, what? I just said Esther was the queen. Well, anyway, bear with me. King, queen, and then we have the Haman, which is the king's right-hand man, is what I'm going to call him. And then we have the other characters. And I'm breaking this down so you don't have to do as much thinking and as much work, right? And that's my job, is to not give you everything, but give you enough to be able to see how it fits for you, right? So then we have Malachi, or Malachi, who is this is where it gets a bit tricky, right? Because he was the uncle, the husband, and the father of Esther. I'm going to explain that. Bear with me. So Esther is she becomes queen. So let's just say queen for now, and I'll unpack it in a tick. And then we have I'm going to say Hashem because that's what you will read, or God, right? As the third, right? So, see anything yet? Do you see anything yet? Anything catch your eye? I'm going to say it like this. We have the dark and the light. Okay, so these are the characters of our play, our movie, our play on the stage of life. These are the characters. Actually, I think I'll tell it like this. It might be more interesting, but we'll see. You can tell me. You can give me a rating how my storytelling is. If we're saying these characters are the light, are the dark, and these characters are the light. For us, what does that mean? Do you think? Like if we have a dark side, what would you call that, or what would that be to you? What would you language that? Any guesses? Put it in the chat. I'm going to wait because I want you to help me with this story. Or just mouth it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. So someone said shadow. What else? What else do we call the shadow? What's another more? So we would call it shadow, yes. The general population, what would they call it? What would they call shadow or dark that comes out when they speak or when they? Do you understand? Yeah. Negative, yes. Yeah, it's all correct. Father, no. But I can see how you get that. So good job, like having a go. Ego. Right. So just to be use layman's terms, and then we can layer on the mystical terms, right? The ego, or the unconscious, the aspects of the self that are not fully mature. So yes, we could call it shadow. It is shadow, right? But the reason I'm not going there is because we have the shadow of the dark as well. So there's many, many layers. So you're correct, right? I just am trying to refine it more so that you can see it better in your life, right? So if we say Vashti, the queen, first queen, she was the first queen, and she is seen as the ego aspect. And the second queen, Esther, is seen as the one who is rising. She's rising, and she rises to what we call the rose. She's risen. And that rising, she gets to a point where she's beyond consciousness. She's not just conscious and in the light. She goes beyond that. I wish I had drawn this differently because I need to draw another picture, but maybe I could rub this side out. Okay, so she is, so we have the first, and then we have the second. And that will make sense when we go into the levels or the stages of the rise. The stages of the rise of the feminine. Now, there's the rise of the feminine as the woman on earth, because we've had patriarchy, we've had matriarchy, right? But we're coming out of this patriarchal way of being, and there's been different types of feminism. Vashti, Queen One, would be seen as that first wave of feminism, because so I'm just seeing, oh, I'm telling the story this way. All right, we're going that way. Rather than reading it, I literally have my version here, but you can go and read the original or Google it. But it won't tell you any of this because this is the mystical understanding of it, right? But you'll get the general story. So where was I? What was I just saying? First, second. Oh, feminism. So Vashti, so let's get into the story. So the king, I'll give you a bit more background of the story, and then we'll go, I'll tell you about this feminism because you need to know this first. So the king ruled 127 provinces. Now, that will be important to some of you and not to others. It's important to me. There are numbers to letters in Hebrew and in Sanskrit. And for probably 20 years, I've been saying there's two languages that look like how they sound through vibration. And they're the ancient, not contemporary Hebrew, ancient. There's different Hebrew. There's the ancient or the biblical Hebrew, and then there's contemporary Hebrew. So there's some differences there, and even in how you spell and pronounce words and stuff like that. So we're not going to go into that, but also in Sanskrit. So when you're reading languages, or you following sort of a Hindi or Hindu tradition or a Tamil tradition. So one of my teachers was Tamil, which is a different part of India, southern India, right? So just knowing there's all these different intricacies. So it's about just giving you what we can, and then whatever calls to you, you can follow and see what rings true to you or gives you insight into what you're experiencing. Yeah. So that's what these stories do. So that's why the numbers have significance for me, because the numbers relate to the geometries and the purity of math, right? The geometries are all of these stories, right? So that's a side note. So the first matriarch was Sarah. So you were Abraham and Sarah back in the day, Old Testament, right? Father Abraham, Abba, father. And they had their first child. I think he was 90, 98, 99. He was, anyway, so we'll maybe tell Sarah's story another day, but because she's another one of the matriarchs. But Esther has her own book. So Esther is actually seen as the granddaughter of Sarah. So without Sarah, Esther wouldn't exist. What does that really mean? Remember, we're talking about levels of feminine rising, the feminine development. So know that we're just going to bookmark that a little bit and know that there's a little bit more there than meets the eye. So inside, just take a note, if anything, because majority of you won't be in the side program, but we go deeper into the Sephirot and what each one means, and where all of these matriarchs and patriarchs live on that tree, and how what virtues and ways of knowing are at different stages of that journey that you can link into to bring into your own life. And we do other things as well. But as I was saying that, I'm just going to put the word Bina there for those of you doing Psi, right? Bina, the mother. So Sarah is seen as that as well, right? The birther. 127 provinces. So this is in Persia. He was a Persian king, right? And ruled over 127 provinces. And I'm not going to go into all the provinces, but it's vast. It's vast. And Haman, and it's interesting because I remember teaching this a while ago, and I was saying Hanuman, which is Ram Dass talks about Hanuman, the monkey god, and all of that, right? So so it's not him, it's Haman, not Hanuman, right? Hanuman, you want to bring in, it's like connected to the heart. He wanted chauvinism. He wanted to rule over women. So this is why it's the ego, it's the dark. Well, actually, the thing is, we don't necessarily want to see the dark as bad. But if you live in that duality of good and bad, then that's how you're going to see it. But it's just the other side. You have all these characters within you. As you do these characters, you have them. And so this is just another way to understand how they play out in your world, right? So so that rulership over the feminine, right? So Vashti, and I've got to get going on this because we're running out of time, but we'll go over it the whole month, not just this, but other aspects of it. Vashti, this first wave of feminism, is standing up to the masculine in the same way, or mirroring the masculine. So fighting Like they push, you push. You know, they can do something, or I can do that too. It's the mirroring. It's the first, well, you know. So in a way, you could see Esther showing a neo-feminism, if you're into that, right? And you'll see why in a moment. But because Vashti was pushing and saying everything the king did, she was saying, oh, I can do that and I can do it better at times, right? So you think about how you are in relationships, not judging, just going, oh, do I fit more with Vashti or do I fit more with Esther? And I'll tell you more about Esther in a moment. So Haman was sort of out to get her. And there is story around why. In a nutshell, what we're going to say is there was a feast. There was a big feast, a big party happening, right? And the king was throwing this party and he wanted Vashti to show up in wearing just the crown. Just the crown. And she refused because they had been butting heads. You know, she's did it, I can do this and and right. So they've been fighting. It's the ego. Now it's seen as back to back. Back to back. This is important. We'll go deeper into this probably tomorrow. But I'm going to give you a little because this is the cool bit, right? This is just the setup. But the cool bit is the stages of development are that we are back to back. So think of Shakti and Shiva, Adam and Eve, you and your partner, or your mum and your dad, or you and the beloved, right? And what the relationship is. And when you're back to back, you're unconscious. When you're back to back, you're unconscious. You can't see the other. You don't even know that there's the other, right? In this case, it is the ego. You're coming from ego, meaning there's projection. There's like, I'm just as good as you. I can do that. You can't tell me what to do. You're blah, 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 whatever, right? It's projection and fighting, right? It's the fear. So Vashti says, no, not doing it. Not doing it. Now, there's many sort of off stories from different commentaries that say why she didn't want to. Similar to I and I, yeah, could look at it like that, yeah. Some say that she grew a tail and she was embarrassed. Now, we can bookmark that because it's a whole nother story about the drop of the feminine, aka Eve, or even Lilith, right? Because Lilith is seen as a demon, a sort of reptilian demon. I don't see it like that. You've got to understand the dark and the light, right? You got to have that one for the other. But if you look at this, if in some of the commentaries they're saying she may have grown a tail, so being that sort of dark feminine, right? Because she's the dark feminine. And so that's sort of a symbolism of that, right? Some say that she put on weight or she had blemishes or something she was vain, right? There's some vanity because it's the ego. So it's just stories to allude to there was vanity there was ego, there was power struggle, and she refused to go. So Haman, who wanted to rule and influence the growth of feminine, right, started whispering to the king and basically said this isn't on, and she's going to pull pull down the whole system, and every other woman, because she's queen, every other woman is going to look to her and do the same thing to their husbands, and men are going to be kaput, right? So there was this fight, this sort of gender fight. So he was a chauvinist. And long story short, I mean, we could go into it for quite a while, but we'll unpack it over time. I just want to give you a little bit before we close down for today. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll pick up a little bit more, and you can ask questions. Because of that fear of this rise and overthrow of the system that was in place by this queen, the dark, seen as the dark side, the dark queen, or the one wanting more. She wasn't bad. She wasn't a bad queen. She was just in her trying to get her power in a masculine way, or in a egoic in a dark masculine way, she was copying, she was mirroring, right? So there's the dark feminine, there's the light feminine, there's the dark masculine, there's the light feminine, there's all different shades in between, but we're just going to stay with this for now, right? So she was put to death. She refused and she was put to death. Now, what that means is her head was handed on a platter, right? She was beheaded, right? She was made smaller. Because what's humility? Talked about this the other day. What's humility? When we bow, we lower our head. Some of the Sikh gurus, and why we bow low, in Kundalini yoga and whatnot, we bow low to put our head lower than the heart. Same thing. That's that humility and giving our head in our hands, right? This is all this symbolism. So yes, it sounds gruesome and all the rest of it, but we're looking at the symbolism, or the underlying parts of the story. Like, what does that mean, right? So that part fought and it died. It was killed. So then the king needed a wife. He was sorry that he killed her. He was lonely. He was sorry that he did it, but in his anger and all the rest, and Haman in his ear and all the rest, he just listened. He wasn't conscious. And there was a moment where he may have been and sort of missed her. So he's like, oh, I need to find a queen. And he goes and he finds Esther. So that's a whole nother story. And I'm gonna tell this part. We'll continue with that. But before we close down the Facebook to go into the mastermind, I just want to remind you that we're talking about the stages of feminine development, the rise of the feminine, and what it means on multiple levels, and then what that means in your awakening and ascension process, how you can see through these stories where you are and maybe what you need some refinement in. Does that make sense? Can you, I'm spending a lot of time and being slow around this because I want to be clear. And because I'm circular, I see the whole picture at once. It can be overwhelming. So we're going to just break it down over the month. We're going to go into other traditions as well. So if this doesn't, what I'm going to say to you, if you're coming in and you're new, you don't know me. Oh, by the way, I'm Cynthia Harrison. I didn't introduce myself, but if you're coming in new, you may go, oh, that's not my tradition, or that's not my religion, or that's not my, I don't believe in that. It's not about a belief. Because I can tell you this story from multiple cultures. The mystic truth will give you the seed where it springs from. So at the moment, the reason why I'm starting with Esther is because the month of March is the time where she's celebrated in the world right now. We're in March. So I'm bringing it in for that energy and that power of all of the thousands of years that she's been, well, all of them have been spoken about. Now, in certain traditions at this time of the year, you would read the book of Esther. It's part of that tradition, right? Before you go into Purim, which is I think the 15th of March or something like that. Don't quote me. It's not my religion, right? But these energies come to me and tell me their stories and give me bits, and I'm like, and show me where they are in my world. That's what a mystic does. So the levels. And this will link. Oh, why is that jumped up saying my Adobe Flash Player needs something? I need to get rid of it off my screen. Just give me a moment. So we'll get rid of that. So we have the 3 phases, and then we have 7 levels or planes or steps. Okay, so this part I'm going to go deeper into because it's what is more relevant to you in your everyday life, like where you are in relationship with yourself or with another, and why you fight. And when you are fighting with someone, how you can bring that around. Because the fighting, you're back to back. If you're face to face, you don't fight. You can't fight because you're conscious and you see. And you can't rise to a place where you wear a crown, right? So in your crown chakra, it's around, it literally is around where you would wear a crown. And then there's beyond that, there's the 8th and 9th, whatnot. There's other power centers. So in a way, these characters link to power centers, but also light eminences, so where they are on that tree of life, but also in other traditions, how conscious you are in your day. You could see all these characters coming in and out. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to rub this off to give you this last piece, and then we'll go over to the mastermind because I can't stay really late today because we've got classes this afternoon. We got painting this afternoon. Woohoo! All right. So there are Can you see that? Yep. So in Relevate, right? Some of you are in that program. I'm going to call it out as so you can see what we're touching on for each different program that we have, right? And what programs you're in and what you're sort of looking at. So with Relevate, so we've got survival. We've got survival instinct. We've got unconscious emotions, so unco, emo. And then we have conscious, so con, emo. And then we have intellect or intelligence, intel. And then we have will and faith. Now, this is, just wait till we get to the story of will and faith. Like I really want to tell you now, but and then we have the progression, which is this way, right? We have the progression this way, and then we have the progression this way, right? So here is back to back, and then we have they call it the surgical removal, but we'll just do a slash. It's like the cut, and then we have front to front. But there's stages in between, right? So in a nutshell, I'll go into this deeper at another time, but I just want to get this in, and then we're going to stop the Facebook and go into the mastermind, right? To sort of hash it out a little bit, but also take you through a process. So this has to do with the drop of human, like, right? We've got the unity, and then there's a drop into. So we're starting here. So there's a rise, but then there's a drop, and then there's a rose. Okay, and this is where we're wearing the crown. That's my crown. And then there's the connection. So when I got married on the top of, it's the highest point in the world, on a mountain, of course, it was at 2 levels. It was at the 14,000 feet and I think 19,000 feet, something like that. Might be 21,000. But where you merge with the self in your spiritual development, there's a union of the masculine and the feminine within yourself. But then there's other ways to develop, and you can, through connection with another human, also go on that journey if you're conscious. So when you first come into a relationship, there will be, you come in unconscious, you come in back to back. And there's a process in relating and relationship where you move through these stages and this development to where you stand face to face and you both wear the crown. There's no power over. You stand in supreme equality. Okay. So that's what this process is. When you're on your spiritual development, when you're begging and pleading to the beloved, that's not face to face. So it's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's a stage of development. So if you're praying or doing ritual or whatever, and it's like, help me, like you're in this, you know what I mean? Like, you're in doubt, then you've turned away from the light into the ego, into the dark. Does that make sense? You've turned away. So when you turn back, you'll get the answer. You will have some clarity. And this is why I was saying, we talked about doubt a little bit yesterday, and just seeing where doubt comes into your life, into your day, because when you have doubt, it takes you out of the trajectory of where you're going. It takes you out. It's like fear will take you out of something I'll teach you as we go along, the triangles, the grid that's in the energetic grid that's in the body, right? So when we doubt, we don't have will or faith. We're not in our intelligence. We don't have conscious emotion. This is unconscious emotion. It's a drop. So when I'm taking you through relevate processes, so regulate to elevate, we're working with survival, what's being encoded and conditioned in your life, right? And your trauma and your attachment and that sort of stuff, to touch into unconscious stuff so you can bring consciousness to it, which will give you the organic intelligence of your body, your organicity. Why? So that you can raise and stand fully conscious of all the stuff that's in the past. It doesn't mean you forget it and all the rest. It's like, oh, that happened, and oh, I can see that now. Yeah, okay. Right? You can't heal without the consciousness. The key is to bring consciousness to the situation. So whether that's your past conditioning and terrors and traumas, or just your wants and needs that weren't met when you were a child, and how they play out. Oh, I've frozen. I froze. I haven't frozen on there. Okay. Facebook's frozen. That's cool. What was I saying? Totally lost where I was going. You have, so for your own stuff, but also in a relationship. And so this is the stuff, we'll go into relationship a little bit more. Again, we're unfolding this over the month. So it's not, the story of Esther is just an opportunity to bring you this. Can't heal without consciousness. Thanks, Fiona. Yeah. So Esther is the story to show how she had to be conscious, and how through doing that and turning face to face, but she did it in a way that is beautiful, like really beautiful to me. And it's she wasn't fighting. She was using her grace and her essence as a woman, right? Her power as a woman, not trying to be a man to overpower. Do you see? It's different when we understand what the feminine power is, and men have it too, but it's a little different because they have that in the masculine body. So it's multi-dimensional, or it's all these different levels. And so I hope I haven't confused you with how I come in and out of the different stories. So again, it's just sort of setting it up so that we can unpack it as we go along. But it's enough that you can go, oh, this is where we're going. Oh, okay, I know now why she's telling me this story. Right? Okay. So I'm going to leave the Facebook at that because we've been going 54 minutes, and oops. And we'll go over to the mastermind. So if you're wanting to continue the journey, if you're on Facebook and you wanted to continue the journey, we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Hawaiian Standard Time. So you'll see on the Facebook page the different time, and yeah, hit that so that when we go live, you'll get an alert, or put it in your calendar. And if you want to come over to the mastermind, you can. That's where we're going now. So those of you that are on Zoom, just hang 10, and I'm just going to stop the live. So thank you, those on Facebook, for joining us, and